I returned to my childhood hometown to take care of my father after he had a health scare. It was just after the holidays. I was 32, living in the city for years, and hadn't expected to end up back in this snowy place. I thought maybe writing about my old town would help me reconnect. But I didn't know what was coming. It was supposed to be a quiet winter. The snow fell heavily, covering everything around me. My father was upstairs, asleep. I sat in my old room working on my laptop. I felt nostalgic, maybe even safe. Then came the knocks. They started late at night, soft and consistent at the back door. At first I thought it was just an animal, maybe a raccoon seeking warmth, but the knocks continued, tapping in a slow rhythm. My heart skipped. I knew it was just the storm playing tricks, but still I felt uneasy. I tried to ignore it and focus on my writing. I shut my eyes tight and managed to force myself back to work. Each night the knocks returned. They haunted me with their rhythm. I even heard whispers carried by the wind. I couldn't make out their words, but they filled me with dread. This isolation was getting to me, I convinced myself. I had just moved back after all. Then one night, I saw shadows slipping outside my window. I jumped up, heart racing, peering into the dark. Nothing, just white snow falling quietly. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was my imagination. But my skin felt alive with fear. I began asking around town, hoping for answers. Everyone I spoke to had their stories, strange things that happened during snowstorms, but they didn't want to talk about it. They brushed their fears aside. I could tell they wanted to forget. It was one of those nights deep in the storm that I stood at the back door. My hand hovered over the doorknob. My breath fogged the glass. I thought I heard my name whispered on the wind. It was soft, almost a suggestion. The knocking grew louder, urgent. Then the last knocker came. "Clara," it called softly. I froze. My heart pounded as I turned my head slowly. I looked outside. What was I hoping to find? The question echoed in my mind. "Clara." The voice felt familiar, but I couldn't place it. The wind howled around me, and I felt it pushing me toward the door. A chill ran down my spine. I knew I shouldn't open it. I gripped the doorknob, feeling ice creep into my fingers. With every knock, I felt the urge to answer growing stronger. But deep down, I realized I was not alone. My father lay asleep upstairs. Many dark things lingered outside in the storm. Whatever was out there clawed at my resolve. I shouldn't, I whispered to myself. And yet, every part of me wanted to know who was calling. I took a deep breath, trying to resist the pull, but the knocker wouldn't stop. "Clara." It sang sweetly into the night. I hesitated, breath caught in my throat. The unknown waited just outside the door, and I was trapped in its grip. I pulled my hand back from the doorknob, my mind racing. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't put a face to it. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity, fighting for control over my body. My father was upstairs, and I couldn't risk exposing him to whatever was out there. Just as I turned away, the knocking shifted. It morphed into a fervent scratching, followed by a brief silence. I stood frozen, hearing nothing but the deafening sound of my own breathing. Then came the voice again, clearer this time. "Clara, let me in." Panic surged through me. It was my name echoing from the dark, but it didn't feel like a comfort. I glanced over my shoulder towards the staircase, torn between my instincts and my fears. What if my father woke up? What if he came downstairs? Before I could decide, I heard a loud thud against the back door, rattling the frame. I jumped back, heart racing again. A cold sweat soaked my palms. I turned the light off, hoping that somehow I could drown out whatever was out there. But the knocks persisted, now a combination of soft thumps and desperate calls. I couldn't think, I needed answers. I crept back to my room and reached for my phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the contacts. I didn't want to bother anyone, but I needed to know if anyone else had heard the voices or the knocks. I settled on Martha, an old friend who still lived in town and seemed to have her ear to the ground. I dialed, anxiety prickling at my thoughts. After what felt like ages, she picked up. "Hello? Martha, it's Clara. I need to ask you something. Have you heard any strange noises lately? Like knocking or whispers?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Why? Are you alone?" "I'm fine," I lied, glancing at the window to the backyard. "But I keep hearing these knocks and I think someone is calling my name. Please, listen to me, Clara," she said urgently. "You need to stay inside. There are stories about what happens when you let someone in during a snowstorm. Just keep the door locked, okay?" Her words sent chills down my spine. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain over the phone, but if you hear it again, don't answer. Just don't." The line went dead. I stood there staring at the wall, heart pounding. Was it really danger? Or was she exaggerating? But I could still hear the scratching at the door, a repeated reminder that I wasn't alone. Then, my phone buzzed again, jolting me. I nearly dropped it in surprise. It was a message from Martha. "Check the attic. I'll be there soon." The attic? I hadn't been up there in years. Why would she suggest that now? A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. That's when I saw it, I thought. But before I could finish that thought, darkness swallowed the house. The lights flickered and dimmed. The knocking stopped. The storm raged on outside, but inside an unsettling silence fell. I wasn't ready for what was coming next. I hesitated in the dark, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The silence wrapped around me like a thick blanket, heavy and suffocating. I could still hear the wind howling outside, but my surroundings felt too quiet, too still. Martha's message pulsed in my mind like a beacon. "Check the attic." It made no sense. My childhood memories of that attic were dusty and forgotten. But curiosity tugged at me along with the dread. I needed to know what was up there. I moved toward the staircase, my footsteps muted against the wooden floor. Every creak felt amplified, as if the house itself was warning me to turn back. I could hear nothing. No voice, no knocking. Only the wind outside. Still, I pressed on. As I reached the top of the stairs, I noticed that my father's door was ajar. I nudged it open slightly, peering inside. He lay fast asleep, his breathing steady, blissfully unaware of the chaos outside. I turned away, feeling a mix of relief and guilt wash over me. I didn't want to disturb him, but I also knew I couldn't stay in ignorance. The attic door was at the end of the hallway. I swallowed hard, each step towards it fueled by a relentless curiosity and an undercurrent of fear. I reached for the knob and took a breath, bracing myself for whatever might be waiting. The door creaked open. A rush of cold air hit my face as I stepped inside. The attic was dimly lit, only a single sliver of moonlight cutting through a dusty window. The air smelled of mildew and forgotten memories. Boxes were stacked everywhere, some marked with faded labels while others lay open with their contents spilling out. I scanned the cramped space, trying to stave off the feeling that I was being watched. Then I spotted it, a small wooden chest pushed against the far wall, partially covered by a pile of old blankets. It was odd, out of place among the mundane debris of life. My heart raced as I approached it, each step heavier with anticipation. I reached down and brushed away the blankets. The chest was locked, but the metal clasp looked old and rusted. My mind raced with possibilities. What secrets lay inside? Just as I leaned closer, a sudden noise made me jump. It was a soft rustling sound coming from behind me. I turned around, ready to confront whatever was hiding in the dark. Can anyone hear me?" I stuttered into the shadows. No response came. Just the emptiness of the attic and the relentless wind outside. Then I heard a faint whisper, not from the original voice but a new one. It sounded like a warning. Get out! In that moment, my instincts screamed at me to leave. I stumbled back toward the attic door, my pulse racing in fear. I could feel a presence behind me, closing in. Just as I reached for the doorknob, the shadows shifted and I felt a cold breath on my neck. I spun around, but there was nothing there. I bolted down the stairs, my heart hammering. Whatever was in that attic stayed buried, but I knew it wouldn't rest for long. My phone buzzed again, and I felt my stomach drop. Martha was here, but what did she know? I took a breath to steady myself. If the past was coming back, I had to be ready for it. I made my way back to the door, hoping it would answer my questions instead of extinguishing my hope. The door creaked as I opened it, and I stepped into the living room, every muscle still tense from my encounter in the attic. The storm outside raged on, but it felt more chaotic in my heart. I needed to find Martha and figure out what was going on. The lights flickered above me, casting long shadows across the room. I walked toward the front window, peering through the glass at the swirling snow. Everything outside was a blur, just like the mess of thoughts in my mind. That's when the loud knock echoed through the house. I jumped, certain my heart had stopped. I hesitated. Was it Martha? Or was it something worse? I crept to the door, my fingers trembling as I reached for the knob. Just before I could turn it, a memory flashed in my mind. Martha's warning, the feeling of dread. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to sound steady. No reply came, just more knocking, persistent and demanding. I took a deep breath, allowing my instincts to take over. I swung the door open, ready for anything. There, standing in the storm, was Martha, her hair whipped by the wind, face pale. She looked like someone who had just outrun a ghost. "Martha," I exclaimed, pulling her inside. She stumbled in, shaking off snow like a wet dog. "What are you doing here? Are you okay?" "I need to talk to you," she gasped, her eyes darting around the room. "It's really important. We're in danger." My stomach sank. "Danger?" I repeated, dread curling in my chest. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a loud crash echoed from the attic. The sound of something heavy tumbling over filled the silence. We both froze, eyes wide. "That's just the wind," I said, my voice wavering. But deep down, I knew better. I had seen the shadows, felt the presence. Martha's face paled further. "No, it's not. I've been hearing things too, things that shouldn't be here." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This is bigger than just you and me. It's about the house." "Like what? What are you talking about?" I demanded, but she only shook her head. It's connected to what's in the attic." The mention of the attic made my pulse quicken. I couldn't revisit that place, not after what I had just experienced. "But it's locked. We can't—" "It's not just a chest," she interrupted, her voice firm now. "It's a gateway. It can't stay shut forever." Panic surged through me every time she mentioned gateway. "What do you mean? What kind of gateway?" Martha crouched down, her hands gripping her knees, the kind that lets things through, things that shouldn't exist in this world. I felt the weight of her words sink into me, a dreadful certainty that whatever was in the chest was about to change everything. Just then, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a brief moment. In that fleeting moment, I felt something shift behind me, a presence creeping closer. That's when I saw it. A shadow stretching from the hallway into the living room, dark and menacing, as if it were reaching for us both. I understood then that we were not alone. "Martha, we need to go," I whispered, backing away slowly. But she stood frozen in place, eyes fixed on the shadow as it twisted and writhed. "Run!" And with that, new fear anchored itself deep in my heart. I turned toward the door, ready to flee, but not before realizing that some encounters leave more than just a memory. They can change lives forever. I bolted for the door, the icy breath of the shadow brushing against my skin. Martha was still rooted to the spot, her gaze locked on the menace creeping closer. "Martha, please!" I screamed. She blinked, finally snapping back to reality. Without a word, she rushed toward me. I pulled the door open wide, the frigid wind biting at my cheeks. It was a blur outside, the swirling white shadows of the storm wrapped around us, but the darkness inside felt even more suffocating. We stumbled into the storm, but the brightness of the snow dimmed as the shadow from the house spilled out after us. I glanced back, my heart racing. It was as if the darkness had taken form, curling into shapes that flickered in and out of sight, eager to latch onto anything that moved. "Martha, we need a plan," I shouted against the howling wind. "Where do we go?" "Back to the barn," she yelled, pointing through the storm. "It's isolated. We can figure this out there." I was nearly overcome with dread, but I nodded. We turned and ran, the snow crunching beneath our feet. Each step felt like I was dragging my legs through molasses, the energy of fear propelling me forward. Then I heard a low growl, rumbling from the depths of the darkness behind us. We pushed through the snow and reached the barn door, fumbling with the latch. The wind howled like a wraith. Just as I managed to yank it open, I felt something cold grip my shoulder. I spun around to see the shadow darting closer, its grasping tendrils stretching like hungry fingers. "Go!" I shouted, shoving Martha inside. I followed closely, slamming the door shut behind us. The barn creaked ominously, but we were safe for a moment. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "What do we do now?" I panted, glancing around the dim interior. The barn smelled of hay and something else, something musty that made me uneasy. Martha, still catching her breath, knelt next to a beam. "It's worse than I thought. I've heard stories about this place. They say the house was built on sacred ground. This is why it's a gateway." "Sacred ground," I echoed, disbelief flooding through me. "What are you talking about?" "Once, long ago, ancient powers were trapped inside. This house is a key." Her eyes glimmered with urgency. "That chest in the attic, it's not just an object. It was meant to hold something back. We have to find a way to close it before it's too late." I felt a chill wash over me. The pressing weight of her words sank in. My thoughts raced back to the attic, to the dark thing I'd glimpsed. "But how do we do that?" I asked, worry creeping back in. Could we even confront it again? Just then, a loud thud reverberated through the barn walls, shaking the hayloft above us. I froze, dread creeping in over my skin. What was that? Martha's eyes widened. "Whatever we trapped in that house is now looking for a way to escape. We have to hurry." There was no more time for questions. The growl from before echoed again, now louder and more insistent, as if whatever was haunting us was closing in fast. With every second, we were losing our chance. I turned to Martha, determination igniting in my chest. "Then let's find a way to face it. Now." And with that, we braced ourselves for whatever was lurking just outside the barn, feeling the air grow heavy with anticipation. The air inside the barn felt heavy and tense as we exchanged quick glances. I could hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears, drowning out the eerie sounds outside. Each thud echoed the urgency of our situation. Time was slipping away, and I could sense the desperate need to do something. "Martha, we need to find something we can use. Anything," I said, scanning the dimly lit interior. Old tools hung on the walls, dusty and forgotten. A pitchfork, a rusty shovel, and a few boxes cluttered the corner, but none felt like they could help us if the shadow caught up to us. Martha began rummaging through the boxes. "There has to be something," she muttered. I joined her, pulling open lids and throwing aside faded bits of fabric and strange knickknacks. The darkness outside pressed closer, a threat ready to explode into our world. Suddenly I caught sight of something shimmering at the back of a box. I reached in, pulling out a small, intricately carved stone. It was cooler to the touch than the surrounding air, and as I examined it, I felt a strange energy, like it was alive in my hands. "What is that?" Martha asked, glancing at the stone with wide eyes. "I don't know. It feels different." As I turned it over, I noticed symbols etched into its surface. These markings, they look ancient. Martha leaned closer. "Maybe it's linked to the powers you mentioned. It could help us." Before I could respond, the barn creaked again, louder this time. The growl outside became a snarl echoing off the walls. "We don't have much time," I yelled. "What do we do with it?" "I think it might be a focus for the energy," she said, her mind racing. "If we can channel it back into the chest, maybe we can seal whatever is trying to escape." "But how do we do that?" I asked, fear creeping back in. "We need to find a way to get back to that attic, if we can just reach it." She stopped mid-sentence, her expression shifting from fear to focus. "There has to be a way to connect the stone to the chest." I wasn't sure if it would work, or if we had any other options. The growl turned into a wail, filling the barn with a tortured sound that made me shiver. I was paralyzed for a moment as panic threatened to take over. "Now!" Martha's voice broke through my thoughts. "We have to go. We can't stay here." With the stone clamped tightly in my hand, we hurried toward the barn door. I felt the cold air washing over us as I pushed it open. The storm had intensified, making it hard to see. Snow whipped around, almost clawing at our faces. I took a deep breath, and with Martha beside me, we sprinted toward the house, the shadows from the barn spilling out behind us. It was now or never. As we dashed through the swirling snow, I could feel the darkness chasing us, hungry and relentless. Just then I heard a voice, a whisper that cut through the storm. "You shouldn't have come," it murmured, sending chills down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, fear strangling my words. Martha nodded, her face pale. "Keep moving. We can't let it stop us now." But the whisper grew louder, shifting into a laugh that echoed in my ears as we approached the house. Something felt wrong. My instincts screamed that we were not alone. And as we reached the door, the eerie laughter followed us inside, swirling around like a thick fog. I glanced back, heart thrumming. What if it's waiting for us? And that was when I saw it, a figure standing in the hallway, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. I froze, the stone slipping slightly from my grip. The figure wasn't just a trick of the light. It was solid, standing there, unmoving. My pulse raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The laughter continued to echo in my ears, wrapping around me like a cold blanket. "Martha!" I hissed, urgency pounding through me. She turned to look and gasped, taken aback by the sight. The glow of its eyes pierced through the darkness, and I could barely make out its form. A silhouette that seemed to twist, shifting unnaturally. What are you?" I stammered, stepping back instinctively. The figure tilted its head, a mocking smile spreading across its shadowed face. "You've come too far, little ones. This place was never meant for you," it said, voice smooth and dripping with a dark charm. Martha edged closer to me, her breath quickening. "We need to go," she whispered, but I felt rooted in place, captivated by the figure's gaze. "We need to go back," it said again, this time with more urgency, as if it was convincing me for my own sake. "You meddle with forces you cannot comprehend." "Let us leave," I shouted suddenly, finding some strength within me. "This isn't your world to control." It chuckled lightly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You're right. This is just a glimpse of what lurks beyond." My heart felt like it would explode. I remembered the stone and the possibility it offered. Our next move had to be decisive. "We have something that can help us," I said, gripping the stone tightly again. It felt warm, almost thrumming in response to the energy in the room. "You think that trinket can save you?" The figure's laughter echoed, dark and menacing. "I'd like to see you try." In an act of desperation, I raised the stone, feeling its power surge. "We're not afraid of you," I declared, though I trembled inside. Martha stepped closer to me, some newfound determination lighting her eyes. Together we stood against the figure, a spark of defiance igniting in the face of our fear. The air around us felt charged, thick with tension. "This is your last chance to leave," it warned, voice twisting into something more sinister. "Don't test my patience." Before I could think, I shouted, "We will use this." Clutching the stone, I focused on its energy, attempting to channel what I felt through my hands. A flash of light erupted from its surface, illuminating the dark hallway and briefly casting the figure's face in stark relief. The glow pushed against the figure, a barrier of light standing firm against the dark. The figure recoiled, its laughter fading into a snarl. "You can't hold it forever," it warned, and I could see its form start to shift like smoke. "Just get back," Martha yelled, pulling me toward the stairs. "We need to get to the attic, now!" We dashed up the stairs, heart pounding, and I could hear the shadows swirling behind us, the voice growing angry and desperate. "You can't escape your fate," it boomed, shaking the walls. When we reached the attic door, I flung it open and we stumbled inside, the cold air inside hitting me like a punch. I turned back for just a moment, the figure still haunting the hallway, its ember-like eyes flickering like dying stars. I closed the door tight and leaned against it, breathless. "What now?" I panted, looking at Martha, who was already scanning the attic for anything useful. In that moment I realized the darkness was still there, lurking just beyond the door, waiting. We had only found a temporary refuge. "We'll need to figure out how to use the stone," Martha said, her voice trembling but determined. I nodded, suddenly aware that the true battle was just beginning. And then I heard it. A soft, scratching sound at the door, almost like fingernails against wood. The scratching grew louder, sending a wave of dread washing over me. My heart raced again, each scratch like a countdown to something terrible. I turned to Martha, whose face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "What if it gets in?" she whispered. "We have to find something to defend ourselves," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I quickly scanned the attic, cluttered with old furniture, dusty boxes, and forgotten memories. There had to be something. Martha moved toward a nearby trunk, her hands trembling as she felt around inside. "Help me!" she urged, panic creeping into her tone. I joined her, throwing the lid open wider. Inside were some old tools, a couple of hammers, and a rusty crowbar. I grabbed the crowbar, its weight giving me a sense of security. Suddenly the scratching stopped. A heavy silence swallowed the room, and I exchanged a worried glance with Martha. "What just happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I replied, gripping the crowbar tightly. I felt the air thicken, and a chill snaked down my spine. Maybe it got bored. Just as I finished speaking, the door rattled violently. The sound was deafening like a storm hitting a frail building. "Martha," I shouted, backing away toward the window. "We might need to escape." She shook her head, fear shining in her eyes. "We can't leave. It's out there." Another harsh bang jolted us, and I stumbled against the wall. The noise felt alive, like it had a will of its own. I turned back toward the door, ready to brace against it, when I noticed something strange on the floor. A trail, light but visible, of something dark and viscous leading away from the door and into the shadows of the attic. "What is that?" Martha asked, her voice quaking. "I have no idea," I replied, "but we can't stick around to find out." I took a cautious step forward, the crowbar raised, determined to explore. As I followed the trail, I noticed it disappeared beneath a pile of boxes. I reached down to shift them aside when a voice, barely a whisper, drifted through the cold air. "Help. Me." I froze. It was soft, almost pleading. I shot a glance at Martha. She looked terrified. "Did you hear that?" I asked, holding my breath. "Yes," she replied. "What was it saying?" I leaned closer to the sound, the words pulling at something inside me. "Help me," it repeated, barely audible. I pushed back the last box to reveal an old, crumbling journal lying flat against the floor, almost soaked in the gooey substance. The cover was faded, but I could make out the initials J.H. Martha came beside me, eyes widening at the sight. "Who do you think J.H. is?" she asked. A mix of curiosity and fear etched across her face. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached for the journal. As my fingers brushed against the cover, I felt a surge of cold radiate from it, and the scratching began again, this time louder and more determined. "Whatever it is, it doesn't want us here," Martha urged, glancing back at the door, now starting to buckle. I clutched the journal tightly. "Maybe it's connected to that figure," I shouted over the chaos, trying to make sense of it all. Just as I stood, I felt a sudden rush that knocked the breath out of me, like a strong wind had swept through the attic. Then everything went dark as the lights flickered and the floor shook. In that instant, the door burst open. The door flew open with a deafening crash, and the darkness behind it pulsed like a living thing. I felt a moment of sheer panic wash over me as I tightened my grip on the crowbar. This was it. Whatever was waiting beyond that door was more than just the scratching sound. "Martha, back up," I yelled, but she was frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. The shadow that crossed the threshold was vague, indistinct, but I could feel a presence. The air crackled around it, thick and suffocating. I took a step forward, ready to confront whatever had come for us. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer came, just an uncanny stillness, as if the attic itself was holding its breath. Then I heard it again. The whisper. "Help. Me." It was closer now, echoing around the attic. Martha trembled beside me, clenching her fists. I glanced at her, and our eyes locked in a silent agreement. We had to leave this place, whatever it took. Just as I turned to make a run for the window, I saw it. A figure materialized from the darkness, cloaked in shadow, its features indistinct but the weight of its presence undeniable. It stood tall, like a silhouette against the dim light filtering through the attic. I felt ice crawl up my spine. Martha gasped, and I could see her instincts kicking in. "We need to go." Before I could act, the figure raised a hand, and the temperature in the room plummeted. My breath came out in visible puffs. Something deep inside me wanted to flee, but I was rooted to the spot. "Help me," it repeated, clearer now, but the plea was laced with a menacing edge. I couldn't tell if it was a cry for assistance or a trap to lure us in. Without thinking, I threw the journal toward the figure. It fell to the floor, landing with a soft thud, smattering the dark liquid around it. The figure flinched as if my action had struck at its core. "To leave this place," I shouted, adrenaline pumping through me. "You're not holding us here." The figure's gaze shifted towards the journal, and I took the opportunity. I grabbed Martha's arm and pulled her toward the window. "Now." As we moved, the scratching sound resumed again, louder than ever, shaking the rafters. Dark tendrils of shadow crept toward us, almost trying to pull us back. I could feel the weight of something terrible behind us, and I refused to look back. The window was old, the wood cracking under pressure. I shoved it open, glass shattering as I forced my way through, and Martha followed closely behind. I hit the ground, rolling before I could catch my breath. We were outside now, but the cold wind felt alive, biting and relentless. Turning back to the house, I saw the figure standing at the window, its form now partially illuminated by the moonlight, twisted and grotesque. It was staring right at me. That's when I saw it. A glimmer beneath the figure, something glinting in what I now realized was more than just darkness. It was a chain. "Did you see that?" I asked breathlessly, heart pounding in my chest. But as I looked at Martha, I knew the answer pulled at a larger question. "Who was that?" she whispered, voice trembling as fear seeped into her tone. I didn't know. But I was sure if we didn't find out whatever that thing was, it would stop at nothing to get us back. The figure's haunting stare lingered in my mind as we fled into the storm. My heart thumped in my chest while I glanced back at the house, fraying veins of darkness weaving through the windows. We had escaped, but the sense of safety felt elusive, like the snow dissolving beneath morning light. "Martha," I gasped, the words spilling out between breaths. "What do you think it wants?" "I don't know," she replied, shivering beside me. "But I'm sure it's connected to the house, those stories everyone keeps whispering about the old woman who lived there and the rituals. There's something trapped there, Clara. Something malicious." An unsettling thought burrowed in my brain, snagging on every memory I'd shared with my father about this town. The way he would cast anxious glances toward that house, quickening his pace when we passed by. I had never understood his fear until now. "Martha, we should try to get to the barn," I said, urging her to break through the snowy veil. It seemed more solid. We might find some answers there. Nodding, she grabbed my hand, and we plunged forward, cutting a path through the icy gusts. Each step felt labored, as if we were running against time, racing toward a truth that could possibly save us. Finally, we reached the barn doorway, battered by the winds but still standing. I pushed it open, and the familiar scent of hay washed over us, welcoming in its own way. The storm roared outside, but inside, the chaotic swirling settled into a tense calm. "Martha, what do you think we'll find here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Inside, every corner felt watchful, waiting. My gaze darted around, looking for anything that might help us make sense of what was going on. "I'm not sure, but we need to be quick. Whatever is in that house will follow us," she replied. Then, a sudden crash. We froze, the sound reverberating through the barn like a haunting echo. It came from the far back corner where I had last seen the shadowy figure. Together we crept towards it, goosebumps prickling my arms. As we approached, I could see that a section of the barn wall had collapsed, revealing an old, worn door that I never even knew existed. The door was cracked, its wood weathered. Curiosity nudged us both. "Do you think it leads to something?" I asked. "Maybe it's the other side," she pondered, stepping forward cautiously. "Or a place to find out what that creature really is." With a shared look of determination, we pushed the door open. On the other side, darkness stretched out endlessly, but a faint glow pulsed within, guiding us deeper. Something compelled us to step inside, offsetting our fear with the prospect of discovery. I reached for the wall, wincing at its rough texture, trying to steady my nerves. The soft whispers of "help me" echoed around us, almost begging. Was this where the old woman performed rituals? I wondered out loud. "I think so," Martha said, stepping carefully forward. "It's like we've walked into a veil separating us from what this place once was." As we moved further in, the glow intensified, casting shadows that danced like frantic spirits against the walls. Eventually, we found ourselves standing in a small chamber, at the center of which rested a stone pedestal, marred but still in one piece. A stone engraved with symbols similar to the ones on the piece I'd found in the barn glimmered softly atop the pedestal. With a knot of dread tightening in my stomach, I wondered if this arcane stone could indeed be the key to whatever hapless energy that we had disturbed. Martha reached out instinctively, her fingertips grazing its surface. "What have we awakened?" she whispered, as if the question alone made us culpable. Before we could reflect, the atmosphere shifted. The wall behind us quivered, restless. An unsettling chill swept through the chamber as the whispers intensified, now more piercing and urgent than ever. "Help me," they cried. I turned to see a shadow coalesce beyond the entrance, and every instinct in my body screamed to run. "We have to do something," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. Trembling, Martha held the small stone from the barn, its warmth a stark contrast to the creeping coldness surrounding us. "What if we use this to counteract whatever is in there?" she said loudly. "It's calling us for help. We have to stand against it." This time, as we placed both hands on the glowing stone upon the pedestal, a rush surged through our bodies, connecting the energy coursing from the engraved markings in a surge of light. But the shadows roared back, furious at our collective defiance. It was then that I understood. A portal opened behind the abyss, unleashed within the house that night. Whether to the realm we summoned or the one we once knew, we had drawn the lines between them. Through the chaos, the figure from the hall emerged, torn between the worlds, its cursed form manifested and writhing, caught somewhere between wrath and pleading. "Martha!" I cried, battling against the noise. "Now! We can send it back!" Together we focused our energy, calling on the power of the stones. Just as shadows reached toward us, tendrils of light lanced into the swirling dark, and the chamber brightened, illuminating not only the darkness, but the shadows themselves. For a moment the figure flickered, revealing a semblance of the lost soul it used to be, but its wails intensified. "You don't belong here. Leave." Heart racing, I fixed my gaze on the stone, determination swelling. "No, we will find a way to stop this." And in our final surge of will, we pressed against the encroaching darkness, channeling whatever remained of our connection with this world. The wind howled as a powerful pulse drove everything back, vanishing in blinding light. We were left gasping, standing in the empty chamber, and the shadows faded into nothing, leaving behind only silence. Panting, we staggered back, but we were safe. Whatever had chained that entity lay sealed for now. I turned to Martha, breathless with uncertainty. "What happens now?" I asked, quiet. "What do you mean?" she replied, wiping away the sweat on her brow. I gestured to the now dark chamber around us. "What about the ones we didn't rescue? What if they're still trapped out there?" Her face fell. "I don't know." And that was the ambiguity that haunted me. We made our choice to fight, but in doing so, we might have opened a door to a reality we didn't understand. In this storm of uncertainty, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that what we had faced could return, or worse, awaken something deeper still. When we emerged into the cold, snow-blanketed world, the house loomed behind us, still standing. But the questions remained. Would it reach out again? Was the danger truly over? And in the years to come, could I ever return to this place that felt so familiar, yet so foreign? As the snowflakes fell against the night, I didn't know the answers. All that lingered were shadows of doubt and whispers carried away in the wind. I felt the weight of uncertainty settle in my chest, echoing the call of a dark existence just beneath the surface, waiting for its moment to arise again.